when you learn and you listen to particular musicians, whether it's Charlie Parker or it's Miles Davis or it's Milt Jackson or whoever, for me as a saxophone player, I try to play exactly like that player. Like when I learn Coleman Hawkins solo, I don't just play the notes. I try to sound like him. If he growls, I growl. If he plays with a strong tongue, I try to repeat that exact sound quality in it.
You are undoubtedly an exuberant saxophone player and also a conductor composer with so many titles, standing in the jazz scene from both the tradition and modern scene. And I know at a very young age you started with piano, and then you transit to clarinet and saxophone and then flute. How was that experiences?
When I started on classical piano, I wasn't that good. I mean, I could play a little bit, right? Funny story.
Yeah.
You know Toshiko Akiyoshi?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She came over with her husband Luta back, and I had just started playing saxophone with her band a little bit. And my father made me play the piano for her. And she heard me, and she told me to stick to the saxophone.
Because when I look at the history of the woodwind instruments, and I can see clearly why it's good to study with something lighter and goes to saxophone. What's your opinion about that?
Well, I think the piano is a great place for most people to start.
And I know you were growing up playing with all the giants. You played with Lionel Hampton, who popularized vibraphone as a jazz instrument at the age of 16, and later with Quincy Jones. What were some of the enduring lessons you had in the little age?
Well, I mean, thanks for bringing those up. That was such an important time for me because I worked so hard when I was 14 and 15 and 16. Like I practiced really hard every day. And I would say during that time of from age 15 to 16, I suddenly got it. I understood about improvisation. I mean, I wasn't that good, but I could play. And I think that those opportunities came up, and I went to Hawaii for 1 week with Lionel Hampton, and it was the best week of my life. Like just playing music every night, being on the beach, being with friends and music, and being with a famous man like Lionel Hampton, the history, being connected to the history of music. I mean, I can't even think of a week now that was better than that. The Quincy Jones thing was interesting because I actually auditioned for that. I got called. Someone said, "Hey, they're auditioning saxophone for this tour."
See, the practice pays off.
Yeah. I mean, I was able to go in and sight read the music and play.
Yeah.
And I got the job to play with Quincy Jones. But the problem was I was 16 years old. Quincy was really part of a corporation and said they have laws, like child labor laws, and you have to be 18 to work with a corporation. So when they found out how old I was, they basically fired me. But Quincy tried to adopt me. He said, "Why don't I just adopt him and I can be his father temporarily and be his guardian, and then we don't have to worry about it." But the lawyers were like, no, it's just easier to just fire him. So that's what they did. So
when was the time that you decided, I want to become a full-time jazz player?
Well, it's a process. But basically, the first time that I really heard Charlie Parker when I was 14, and my teacher, great vibraphone player named Charlie Shoemake, had me studying Charlie Parker's music and memorizing it. Once I understood the depth of jazz music and the swing and the feel of it and the fact that you improvise and you make it up, it felt to me more personal than playing written music. It just felt like this is something that's deeply personal. And so in that time of high school, when I worked on the music, but by the time I graduated from high school, when I was 17, that's when I knew absolutely that I wanted to be a jazz musician and not a commercial musician. I would usually practice most of the time between that and dinner, when my mom would serve dinner or whatever. So it could be 2-3 hours. Not every day, but I mean, it's that was my basic routine. It's I really loved, once I discovered jazz and I wanted to play along with records and do all of that, I'd probably do 2 or 3 hours a day.
Was there a moment that you feel, okay, I want to stop for a while, I want to take some rest? How do you balance out such a resistance of fatigueness?
That's a great question. And I would say that by nature, I balance things. I'm not obsessive. So it wasn't like oh, I'm obsessed with practicing and I want to be really good and I can't do anything else but practice. I'm not going to do my homework. I'm not going to play with my friends. That wasn't me. I did balance things out. I watched TV. I played sports a little bit. I hung out with my friends and I did all the normal things. So I wasn't like crazy obsessive about it. Because some people who are like that, they become so good so fast.
Just a little story. I heard some of my friends who was like very good at bebop, those jazz stuff. He would improvise like new things and balance out maybe some neo soul stuff. Maybe, oh, I can like play some pop, but play in the jazz way, something like that to balance out. But I felt like this is still a way of practicing. Since we're talking about Charlie Parker, a lot of people like Charlie Parker. But then how should we learn his work? How should we learn his solo?
Well, the thing is, Charlie Parker, his music has created a language that is kind of the basic language for improvisation in jazz. I mean, there was music before him, of course, and there was improvisation before him, but the way he put together the harmony, the way he emphasized certain notes, flat nines, and the way that he created cadence and how he resolved cadence was something that was more intense and more complex than those who came before him. So it's almost like we always talk about him being a genius. It's because he found something unique, and it almost feels like he jumped from this to this. And suddenly he was playing a different way than anybody else. And then that influenced a lot of people. And then if you go decades later until now, people still use the language that he created as sort of the foundation for most of what we play. Not everybody. And a lot of people find their own personal way to move away from that. But I still think that that is at the core of what most of us play. Well, when I'm talking about Charlie Parker, it's like the way he'll right? The way he uses additional notes to kind of end us on certain notes of the chord, right? And then there's like be certain kinds of tension and release to bring us to certain chords. And I think that's, for me, like that's where a lot of the beauty is in the way that he played. You hear, right? And just using that flat nine, which comes right out of Bach, but how he has managed to use that to get us into the next chord is just so beautiful. And those are the things that have to become really second nature, that we hear it, we feel it, we don't have to think about it. And I think when we practice, if we memorize Charlie Parker, we memorize all those great players with that kind of language, it becomes part of us. Then we can let that be second nature, and then we think about what it is we're feeling in that moment, what we're thinking and feeling in that moment, and then the music, hopefully, just as natural. We're not thinking about the notes. Just as we talk, we're not thinking about, are we saying a verb? Which noun are we using? What word am I going to choose now? It just comes naturally. But we had to learn it as a kid, right? Yeah. So I think it's really important to spend a lot of time working on the language so that we can then kind of forget about it.
Because it's easy to be too nerdy into all those little rules, scale degrees, and think about patterns and everything. But also we have to be patient as well at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. You have to trust. You have to trust that you will get better, that you will learn it, that you will find it. I think a lot of people are very nervous about it. What if I don't get better? What if I don't? Right? And that's what can cause obsession with people and why they over-practice, because they're obsessed with the idea that they're not going to get better. The fact is, if you just play, you're going to get better automatically because you're doing it. And if you practice with a certain sort of understanding of what you want to achieve, like having very specific goals when you practice, then you'll get to that faster and you'll improve faster. But I want people not to be nervous about it. And I don't want people to feel nervous at all with anything surrounding music and jazz, especially, and improvisation, because we're so nervous all the time. We have so many things that create tension in our lives. I mean,
Yeah.
people are looking at their phone constantly. They're worried about their friends. They're worried about comments. They're worried about their school. They're worried about money. They're worried about their family. Can we just have a place where we're not worried? It's hard though, because if we take it seriously, we will worry about it to some degree. But that would be my wish, so people could find a safe place in music and make it just a place they can be themselves.
I mean, we don't want to hear nervousness in the music as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Someone gets stressed, we can hear it right away.
It's true.
Would you suggest like all the jazz players should include Charlie as their language?
Yeah, I think so. We call him Bird, and people always talk about Bird, right?
Mm-hmm.
So yes, absolutely. But it's great to trace the lineage and listen to all the people that he influenced, whether it was Sonny Rollins or Sonny Chris or Sonny Stitt or Charles McPherson or Phil Woods or Cannonball Adderley, or some of the younger people today, or people of my generation like Dick Oates, or there's a Zoe Obadia who's she's 30 years old or so, and it's you see the lineage, you see how the language is passed from decade to decade, from generation to generation. So it is important to go all the way back, but it's important to see where it is now and pay attention to that and let that influence you as well.
Since you were mentioning about all those great saxophone players like Knoblauch, Sonny Stitt, they all develop their own unique characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
So when we listen to their playing, how should we get inspiration from?
Well, that's such a good question, and I think that for me as a saxophone player, I try to play exactly like that player. Like when I learn Coleman Hawkins solo, I don't just play the notes. I try to sound like him. If he growls, I growl. If he plays with a strong tongue, I try to repeat that exact sound quality in it. And I feel like if you can get close to really sort of absorbing all those characteristics of the music, not just the notes, but everything, the spirituality, the soul that's behind the way they play, you develop something. But you don't want to focus just on one player, because then you'll sound like that player and you won't have your own style. But if you do that and you do it with 30, 40 different players and you just copy them and you try to sound exactly like them, then you move on to somebody else and then you try to sound exactly like them. You develop this flexibility to begin with. Now you can express yourself in a variety of ways, different dynamics, different ways of phrasing, different types of sounds and things like that. So it's really important to really pay attention to everybody.
Yeah, just like thinking language is also music and music is also language. It's just pitches, dynamics, expressions. So then if you own all those library of sounds, you become the instrument itself.
Yeah, but like the way you're talking right now, you have a certain cadence and a certain up and down, and some words you're saying shorter and some sentences are a little longer. And we're not just talking like this and saying the words and communicating. Everything has expression, where we bring different kinds of ways of expressing the sounds. Makes it personal. I just think a lot of it becomes second nature. I think if you do the work, if you just pay attention and you just work and you memorize, like for me, I memorized about 80 different solos by different bebop players. And so I just sort of automatically developed the language. So I wasn't really thinking about it so much. I don't know what my heart and my liver and my kidneys are doing. I walk around all day long and I don't know what these organs are doing. I don't know how they're connected, where their muscles are. I'm more thinking about how I'm going to walk over there, right? I'm not thinking about which muscle is being used and all that. And I think that with music, it's like that. We think about how we're going to get from here to there, not every little detail about every little chord and every little note. We do that in the beginning as we're learning. We just paying attention and memorizing stuff. But as soon as we can just get like off of all of those notes and just think about more of a big picture thing, like what are we feeling? How can we just let this music flow through us? That for me is the place where you find the magic and you find that wonderful intimacy with the music. That comes, I believe, naturally. If you just play and you play and you play and don't overanalyze, just play. You'll start to feel that.
And then the rhythm, the timing will come. because everything's integrated. How do you think about the manipulation of timing? A lot of people say, oh, I have to know how to learn the timing. I have to learn how to manipulate. I don't like the words, but what's your point of view?
Like the time feeling, like how we play in time?
How to play in time, how to play variedly with different
Yeah,
rhythms.
yeah, that's great. I mean, we learn by copying. Like if I put on a record and I hear Sonny Rollins live at the Vanguard, boo-doo-da-doo-da-doo, if he's swinging, boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo, we play more straight, or if it's faster, it might be straighter. I'm not thinking, oh, that's a triplet, or that's almost a triplet, or that's more like straight eighth, but I don't think about it like that. I think of it like doo-doo-doo-doo, like I think about that. Think about the sound of it. And if you copy Sonny Rollins long enough, you're going to be able to play that rhythm yourself. It's going to be more natural. Like there are people who like to set up a metronome and work on things and do things like da 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 whatever. I've never been that kind of person. I've just never been like that kind of formulaic person. I mean, maybe I would have been faster to develop technique, but for me, that just wasn't the way I did things.
It's more organic that way.
I think so. It also, you have to recognize what you're good at. You have to recognize what you need to work on. We talked about that earlier. It's like, if you know you need to work on your technique, you should work on it. If you know you need to work on how you express yourself and your sound, then you need to work on that. So you do need to recognize your strengths and your weaknesses to some point. But I think all of that pretty much naturally gets developed at the same time if you just play. You just play.
When someone or students learning a new standard, we have to learn all the lyrics, the melody, the chord changes, and all those. What are some of the tips, suggestions to grab it and own it?
I mean, it depends on what you want to do with them, right? Like like for jazz musicians, we use standards because it's a vehicle for us to improvise on. We like the chord changes, we like the melody, and so we play them. I mean, I used to make the mistake all the time of learning a standard by listening to Miles Davis play it, or learning a standard by listening to some jazz musician interpret it. That's good for many, many things, but what that isn't good for necessarily is learning the melody and the original melody, because you're interpreting somebody else's interpretation. So you're removed from the actual origin of the tune. So I do know some people who have written out, they've studied, and they've found the original sheet music of standard tunes and learned the original melodies and the original chords. I think that is maybe a good thing to do, because you really do learn the original melody and you learn the lyrics. Like you mentioned, like having to learn the lyrics teaches us something about how to phrase, possibly. But ultimately, if you're just playing a standard, you're just going to phrase it the way you want to phrase it. I don't think there are any rules about it. I think as far as memorizing tunes, it's much better to do that by listening, like putting on a record and playing along, instead of looking at the music. For me, now maybe other people are different, but when I read something and I look at it, I never memorize it. It doesn't go into my brain. It goes into my eyes and out. But if I listen to it and it comes through my ears, not my eyes, it finds it somewhere in my brain much better. So I think for people, I would suggest listening and learning the tune. If you want to learn a tune, put on a Sinatra record and you'll learn the melody that way.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
I mean, that's just the way I did it. I mean, I really don't know if it's how other people need to do it.
Yeah, because right now we have so many tools that we kind of like to have to choose one way that works really for oneself. Because someone who reads really fast, who reads the music really into their own, body system, then hallelujah, they found their voice. Yeah.
Right.
But I guess jazz has to be a different way of approaching it, so then it becomes more fresh. Because we want to, update ourselves too, right? So, and for me, also learning from ear is definitely a challenge to me, but I'm getting used to it for sure. Yeah, I kind of like have this photographic memory, which I can check the music and I see it, and I can play it and memorize it. I think that's from training from my back then. Yeah. So now I have to reverse my training.
No, but that's really an important thing, and that you have that gift is really great.
But it takes tremendous effort to break the habits. and then unlearn and learn new things. Okay, now let's jump to your own composition. So you had two masterpieces. Number one is Presidential Suite, and that piece won the Grammy Awards for Best Large Jazz Ensemble. So this is incredible because you transcribed 8 public figures from those most important historic moments in life. And when I was listening to it, I felt that you created an entire new world. And the music was not just become music, it becomes an ancestry, becomes memories, some rooted in our own memories. I remember the last time I listened a couple of times. And the last time I listened to it was in Boston in the public park, and I was lying on the ground, free of nothing, and just looking at the skies, looking at the trees, and felt I was sink down to the motherland, the way the motherland was holding my whole body and my mind, my soul. It was tremendous. And I felt the bass in churches' addresses, it becomes so heavy. It becomes heartbeat, it becomes steps. And I just can't analyze for 1 second. So how did you come up with this concept and inspiration?
Well, there's so many things that led up to that. I remember there was a point where I didn't feel very creative, and I felt like I was struggling a lot with finding myself in music and really finding who I am and how to take this music and do something with it. I also felt like I was struggling with my career, like I wasn't doing the kind of jobs that I wanted to do, like I wasn't playing the gigs that I wanted and playing with the kind of people that I wanted all the time. And that was just a point. I was busy and I was working, but it was just like, why is this? And I remember talking to somebody. He was very smart. He says, well, if I look at you, I could say that you're not embracing your mythology, your personal mythology. And I was like, well, I think of mythology, I think of Greek myths and things like that. He goes, no, I mean, your personal mythology is really like who your parents were. Where did you grow up? What was your environment like? What era did you grow up in? What were the things that you listened to as a kid or experienced? Where were your parents from? What were their jobs? What was your house like? I mean, all those things kind of formulate who we are. So my parents were civil rights activists in the late 60s. They did so much to help the cause, and I was exposed to so many different, people from different backgrounds, and we had the Black Panthers at our house. It was just a different kind of upbringing, and so politics was really important, especially to my mother. So I understood that I wanted to do a piece based on politics in some kind of way. So I started listening to political speeches. And I was really like, there's such a cadence, the way, like we were talking about language and how they go up and down and they express in so many ways, that I became fascinated with the idea of transcribing all the speeches for their tones and their pitches and some of their cadence. And I realized I wanted to focus on speeches that had to do with human rights and civil rights and freedom, basically because that was so important to my parents. And so by doing all of that, I came up with this concept, which was fairly unique, but also it was strong because it was rooted in things that were deep inside of me in some kind of way. And I think that made it more powerful than if I had just said, oh, I'm just going to write a bunch of music.